What's up everyone, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be talking about a recent trip I did to Oaxaca with my friends Keith, Andrew, and Eric. By the end of the trip we had covered a ton of ground and ended up really close to the Veracruz border, pretty close to the Chiapas border, as well as along the Oaxacan Pacific coastline. Covering so much ground meant that we went through quite a few different biomes, which led us to see about 355 species, of which 38 of those or so were Mexican endemics. Right away when we got off the plane, we went to an Oxxo, which is a famous Mexican convenience store that we went to a ton. This flashing rattlesnake was a really cool touch to our Airbnb on the first night. We got up bright and early for our first day of birding and headed into the thorn scrub habitat that holds a lot of the Mexican endemic species we were looking for. This area can be really hot, but overall it's super fun birding and offers a lot of cool diversity. Our birding started off with a bang and we were looking at bridled sparrow, which easily makes the case for one of the coolest species in its entire family. We all got our life for chestnut-capped brushfinch really early on, but ended up getting to see quite a few more of these guys throughout the trip and never really got sick of them because they're really cool. Yet another cool sparrow, which you can hear calling throughout this clip, was the Oaxaca sparrow. These guys are pretty similar to the rufous crown sparrows we're used to seeing in the United States, and while they're not the flashiest, we still got a kick out of seeing them. You might be thinking the bird pictured here is a Hutton's vireo, in which case you're probably wondering why I'm including that in this video, but this is actually a dwarf vireo, which is another Mexican endemic and looks very similar to Hutton's. All of us saw the blue mockingbird at Carlsbad Caverns National Park in New Mexico, so we were really excited to see a blue mockingbird in its core range, and we ended up seeing a ton of these guys, so that was really awesome. Slaty vireo has a piercing ivory eye and a fairly unique color scheme for vireos, which made it one of the coolest species we saw during the entire trip. White-throated towhees were really common and sort of filled the niche that California or canyon towhees fill in the United States, but they were still a pretty cool-looking bird and a nice mellow zone to pick up for the trip. Oftentimes, species don't really live up to how they look in the field guide or what their name suggests, but elegant euphonia was not one of those species. Both the male and female were stunning, and we really enjoyed watching them. In contrast to elegant euphonia, golden vireo were not as cool as we were expecting, but they were still pretty fun, and we were lucky to run into a few of them. While they were quite common, rufous-capped warblers were still fun to see because they have a lot of personality. Dusky hummingbird gets points for being a Mexican endemic, but otherwise they're not a particularly special species of hummingbird.
It's the whitest tree in the world, the tree of Tule.
We left the thorn scrub and headed into the cactus forest to look for several new species, including gray-breasted woodpecker and Boucard's wren. Gray-breasted woodpeckers are a nice-looking Melanerpes, which is a genus that many U.S. birders are probably familiar with because species like red-bellied woodpecker, acorn woodpecker, Lewis's woodpecker, red-headed woodpecker, and others are in that genus. Gray-breasted woodpeckers are fairly unique, though, because they're almost entirely found in cactus forests or areas adjacent to cactus forests. Boucard's wren also regularly utilize cactus forests and are quite often found in the company of gray-breasted woodpeckers.
What's up? We're at Zona Arqueológica Yagul. We just had gray-breasted woodpecker and Boucard's wren, some really cool endemics of the cactus forest. And earlier today we had some really nice birds at Arroyo El Viente. Things like slaty vireo, golden vireo, bridled sparrow, Oaxaca sparrow, and lots more. We're kind of up at the top here where there's some really nice ruins down there and a great view of the valley.
This was the first cinnamon-rumped seed-eater of several we would see on the trip. Thick-billed kingbirds breed in southeastern Arizona and southwestern New Mexico, but they're still cool to see no matter what. The next species is an awesome endemic called an ocellated thrasher, and I'll just go ahead and let it sing. When we finished up in the valley, we spent the next couple of days birding the Highlands in an area called Cumbre that offered an entirely new array of species. Tufted flycatchers are incredibly cute, especially when they're on a nest like this one. The Cumbre area actually looked pretty similar to pine forests in the western US, although the massive agaves were really unique and awesome to see. Long-tailed wood partridge are really cool birds with intricate patterning and a bright red bill, and they're pretty elusive as they tend to creep along pine or evergreen forest floors, so we were super stoked to get good looks at these birds. I honestly don't have a ton to say about golden-browed warbler besides the fact that they are awesome and have a really cool looking plumage. This was a gorgeous and super mossy stretch of forest where we saw two of the biggest reasons we came to Cumbre. One of those reasons was to see dwarf jay, which is the smallest corvid in the entire world, and just an all-around stunning bird. Another big reason we came to Cumbre was to look for gray-barred wren, which is a species that really likes to associate with dwarf jay, and if you see a dwarf jay, you're almost sure to find a gray-barred wren somewhere nearby. Even though I anticipated seeing spot-crowned woodcreepers at Cumbre, my mind was still blown because I'm very used to seeing woodcreepers in lowland and humid rainforest, so seeing one at a higher elevation pine forest was just kind of a shocker. Collared towhees were a cool species to see, especially after I had heard so much about them from the amazing Moore Lab of Zoology, which looked at their hybrid zone with spotted towhees in central Mexico. Rufous-capped brushfinch were not easy to see, but they were pretty cool looking, so they get a pass. Fulvous owl is a Central American species and one of Central America's counterparts to North America's barred and spotted owls. On our third day, we spent a little bit more time in the Cumbre area before descending back down into a valley that had rusty-crowned ground sparrow, a species that's in the same genus as the white-throated towhees from earlier and is another endemic. We left that valley and headed back up, gaining elevation and reaching a whole new area which offered pine forest similar to Cumbre and eventually turned into a much lusher area that would later transition into the cloud forest. We did see red warblers all around Cumbre, but the best views we got were on the road into the cloud forest, and this species was spectacular as advertised with that gorgeous red color. This was our view above the cloud forest, and as we began our descent down into it, it started to get really foggy, as you might expect. Unicolor jay are actually in the same genus as the scrub jays we find in the United States, and they are gorgeous with that deep, deep blue. We never got to see one, but enjoyed hearing the bizarre and lovely song of the slate-colored solitaire. This crested guan is an absolutely massive bird and flushed up from the roadside, allowing us some really cool looks. This was the last bird we saw on the third day of the trip. We birded the lowlands for the next couple of days and got to see an entirely new array of species, many of which we never saw again during the rest of the trip. And lowlands are just awesome. These tropical rainforests tend to have diversity of flora and fauna just skyrocket. We spent our first morning in the lowlands around this area, which has these rocky outcroppings, but also has a lot of cow and farming degradation. This is where we looked for summacrest wren and eventually heard them, but didn't see them unfortunately, but we were still really excited because it's a very rare and endemic bird. Sadly, summacrest wrens are quite at risk because of habitat degradation from the agricultural and cattle industry. Here are some of the cool species we got to see while looking for summacrest wren. Beyond their good looks, brown basilisk are famous for an ability that they have evolved to avoid predation by running across water, which is really cool. Basically, whenever a predator comes by, this species finds the nearest body of water and will run across it, which is not something you see often in the reptile community and makes this one of the coolest herps in all of Central and South America. We stayed at a bunch of different local Airbnbs and hotels, and we pretty much loved all of them. The owners were always super sweet, which was consistent with the people of Oaxaca, just a ton of really great people. And one of our favorite hotels was called New Lee. The owners were super sweet. They gave us that pan dulce for free. They talked to us a lot, and they were just super nice. And one of the owners was kept asking us to go climb the roof so that we could get a really nice view, and we were kind of hesitant because, as you can see, these ladders are really sketchy, but we wanted to make her happy and also did not want to turn down a cool view, so we were like, sure, let's go up there. And sure enough, it was really a nice sight, and we had things like orpendulas flying over us, so there was no way to be unhappy up there. And sure enough, the lady was super stoked that we were up there. She had a big smile on her face, and it was totally worth it. We did a night drive to look for northern patu and any other owls we could run into, and it was really productive. We got this nice barn owl. We actually spotted a cat. We didn't know if it was an ocelot or a margay, but either way, awesome to see a cat. And then Erik tells us to stop the car because he found an awesome bird, a striped owl, which was just one of the coolest species of the trip, and it's kind of at the northern end of its range in Oaxaca, so we totally did not expect to see one, and we're extremely excited. After a lot of spotlighting, we ended up running into a northern patu, which was a lifer all around, and a super cool bird we were really stoked to see. They have some crazy sounds and have these massive bulging yellow eyes if you see them up close, so just a really cool species all around. Another surprise on our night drive was flushing a boat-billed heron, which flew up out of this little drainage area and landed in a nearby tree, giving us great looks. This clip shows us driving in Valle Nacional, and the stuff you see at the top of the road is papel picado, which is a really famous and popular Mexican decoration that I love, and we saw it in almost every town. This was a stunning view just before we took a right onto the Camino Plan de las Flores. This was one of the most productive birding roads of the entire trip, and we really enjoyed slowly working our way down the road.
What's up? We just drove down the Camino Plan de las Flores, which is this awesome road to a little town down by a really nice river here. Got a toucan. What do you think of that, Andrew?
Mind blown.
Mind blown.
This was the bridge over the river at the base of town, and it was really wobbly and a little bit sketchy, but it gave us a gorgeous view, and we were really happy to walk across it. White-collared manakins make a really cool and peculiar wing noise, which I unfortunately wasn't able to film, but I was still happy to get some footage of it eating some food. Crimson-collared tanagers are not particularly range-restricted, but they were one of my favorite birds of the trip with that amazing and contrasting red and black color scheme. Here are a few more cool species we got to see at El Camino Plan de las Flores. We left the lowlands and headed back to the Oaxaca Valley, where we did a tiny bit of birding to pick up this pileated flycatcher. The rest of the trip will be detailed in a part 2, so please like, subscribe, and keep an eye out for that video.